As a writer, engaging with your reader and giving them the information and evidence needed to understand your argument is one of our primary goals. Without coherence in our writing, the reader is left to wonder what we mean, how ideas connect and relate, what evidence works to support our thesis. The more questions a reader has about our intentions, the less effective our writing will be. In this second of a three-part lecture, we will discuss the strategies of paragraph development, organization, voice, and style in your writing. As humans, we have a strong desire to tell and listen to stories. In fact, storytelling is far older than writing itself. Just like when we watch movies, we want our writing to make sense as we move from beginning to middle to end. When a good movie connects scenes together, we are drawn into the story because it makes sense. The same goes for essay writing. We as writers need to be aware of the function of each paragraph. What purpose does it serve? What is it attempting to do? Tell a story, prove a point, provide evidence? Also, we want to consider its design. How can we create paragraphs to accomplish that goal? How can the ideas be most convincing? Once a writer creates the individual paragraphs, the next task is connecting them with transitions. We've always heard and used the word flow. All essays need to flow, the reader's seamless voyage from introduction to conclusion. The words you choose to create those paragraphs is all part of your voice as a writer. Tone and style play a key role in stringing all this together and helping the reader engage with your ideas. Let's visit some basics of essay structure. While these parts of the essay may seem very familiar, their function and design in university-level academic writing may touch on some new and unfamiliar ideas. An effective introduction will do much more than just give the reader general information about the topic. Consider the many unique ways a writer can engage the reader. How can a personal narrative present a topic that your reader may not be familiar with? What can you say about a seemingly boring or dry topic that will help the reader see it from a new angle? What connection can you make that will hook the reader to want to read more? The goal of every introduction is to get the reader to your thesis and entice them to want to read on. Body paragraphs can be a writer's best friend or worst enemy. There are times in every writer's life when he or she wants to make a point about a topic but can't figure out how. Finding ways to connect seemingly unrelated ideas can be tricky, but done effectively can create engaging and enlightening essays. Body paragraphs are where the finer details have a chance to shine or wither away, all depending on how a writer considers organization. Traditionally, body paragraphs will focus on one point or idea, or elaborate on an idea over multiple paragraphs. The evidence that a writer includes in the paragraph to support the thesis will depend on the genre or type of essay. A personal narrative will present a story. A research paper will likely include data from a study. An analysis may provide examples from the subject of a paper. Regardless of the type of evidence, in academic writing, it is important to note that we can use as many body paragraphs as we need to prove a point. There is no 5-paragraph model to follow. That was a good place to start, learning how to structure an essay, but university-level writing is much more complex. I mentioned earlier in this slide that it can be tricky connecting ideas. You've developed all these body paragraphs, but putting them together takes topic sentences and transitions that create a roadmap for the reader. More on this in a bit. Finally, the conclusion. Unlike what many writers believe, this is not an introduction restated. You do want to revisit your main argument. This is the clue to the reader that they've reached the end of the essay. But revisiting does not mean restated. It means using all of the knowledge the reader now has of the topic, considering what they read in the body, and using it to your advantage. How can you present the topic in a new light? What change in perspective can you anticipate from the reader? And how can you use that to your advantage? In the end, you want to be encouraging your reader to understand your side, or agree with your point, or change their mind about the topic. Once you've done that, you can leave them with a lasting thought or impression that will carry on past the closing words of your essay. Creating paragraphs is an art form all its own. Their function relies on their design as much as the design directs their function. As I mentioned before, a paragraph presents one point or idea. They are tools for readers to present a point in a specific way, using carefully chosen words and evidence. In doing so, writers create a roadmap for readers, guiding them along the way toward the conclusion. The design of each paragraph requires careful thought and organization, depending on what a writer wants the paragraph to do. Most importantly, a writer must remain open to revising paragraphs to maximize their effectiveness. Tying paragraphs together isn't as simple as counting on a transitional phrase. While a, quote, for example, may work and be appropriate, not every body paragraph will be so clear-cut in the way it connects to its neighbors. We as writers will have a clear mental image of how the ideas connect. It is our job to use the right transitions to help the reader understand that connection. These transitions become the lens for effective organization. The reader will see clearly the points you are making and can easily follow them. That is what essay organization aims to do, create flow. In these example paragraphs, you'll notice how the sentences in red clearly create a transition from the previous paragraph. Take a few moments to pause the lecture here and read the paragraphs on the screen. The first example uses a traditional transitional phrase, but the second is more complex and subtle. It transitions the reader with a question, anticipating a logical answer and providing an explanation. This is an example of how design informs and directs the function of the paragraphs. You can see here that creating coherence within the paragraphs is just as important as among them. Take a few moments to pause the lecture here and read the paragraphs on the screen. The transitional phrases in red are guideposts set up by the writer to help the reader along. You'll see in paragraph 1, the activity of paintball is explained, and in paragraph 2, the writer elaborates on the more complex nuances of the sport. Both of these paragraphs help the reader to understand how each sentence works with those around it. A discussion of coherence in writing wouldn't be complete without focusing some time on voice and style. Voice refers to the way our words sound on the page. This can be clearly distinguished if you read passages from Mark Twain, Edgar Allan Poe, J.K. Rowling, and Nicholas Sparks. They are all writers of fiction, but the way their words sound on the page are vastly different. Each writer has a unique voice, and honing that voice takes time and practice. But writing isn't like speaking. Developing a voice isn't just about writing the way one talks. Its mastery is understanding the different styles of writing and the way to approach each of them. The style a writer uses to compose a personal narrative will be different from an academic research paper, which will be different from writing an informal email or letter. Our word choice, our tone, all will be affected by the type of writing. You will find that most university-level essays require a formal academic style and tone. Here are a couple examples to help distinguish between informal, non-academic writing and writing that takes a more formal academic tone. Take a few moments to pause the lecture here and read the paragraphs on your screen. Notice that the topic focus is the same, but the word choice and the tone make these two remarkably different. While neither of these paragraphs is better than the other, each serves a purpose depending on the type of writing. The informal paragraph would be more appropriate for a discussion thread comment or perhaps an in-class group response to an article. The formal paragraph would be best served in an academic research or analysis essay. Regardless of our intentions as writers, a reader requires a well-organized and coherent essay to come away with a changed perspective or new appreciation for the topic. Every part of an essay is responsible for making that happen, and just like a chain, an essay will only be as strong as its weakest link. So building a strong essay means developing an introduction that pops, body paragraphs that wow, and a conclusion that soars. Tying them all together tightly with effective transitions and using a tone and style that best represents you and the essay's message will guarantee that the time and energy put into an essay will not be lost on a reader who walks away saying, "So what?" The best a writer can strive for is a reader that finishes their essay wanting more. Thanks for joining me in this second of 3 lectures. Next up is part 3 of our review, which will focus on mechanics and formatting. But before you can move on, be sure to complete the part 2 quiz.